Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Climate Youth News at COP. We bring you news from the 27th World Climate Change Conference in Egypt and provide you with the most important information of the day, the latest developments and voices from the field. We start with a first contribution on the topic of the day.
Hi, my name is Moses Sekians from Kampala, Uganda. I'm happy to hear that leaders at COP27 choose to give a standalone day to engage youth in discussions and negotiations at COP27, which is a good idea because most of these youth have been on the front line of climate crisis seeking for climate justice. I want to remind world leaders at COP27 that youth didn't go to Egypt as twice. They went to tell their stories and what they have discovered while on the front lines. Therefore, we should give them microphones. You never know what they have to say could bring about change and saving our Mother Earth. Let's not only talk about issues, let's act. And the world leaders should know that youth, we are fighting for what is ours and what will be ours in the next years or in the future. According to UN, there is over 1.2 billion youth in the world and over 1.9 billion children in the world. And you may find that even the biggest percentage of this population is not counted. Now imagine a situation when this population and the children they will give birth to have nowhere to stay. When our one and only planet Earth is completely distracted. When we breathe in carbon dioxide instead of oxygen. When we can't grow crops anymore. For continents like Africa that depend on agriculture, it will mean death. When we have nothing to do about floods and its effects, and many more other issues that may rise from rampant climate change. Climate crisis is real and it is already lobbying our future. And that's why youth are acting like adults to think about solutions and save our future. It is not justice for our rivers to be polluted. It's not justice for our lakes, for our land to be polluted. It's not justice for our air to be polluted. It's not justice for the biggest world polluters to be untouchable. Is it justice when the loss and damage finance becomes a promise? The attitudes of business owners, employees, consumers and the general public require change in order to reduce emissions, decrease temperatures and to reverse the centuries of damages we have caused in order to replenish our planet's life and protect the sources for survival. Let's take action to help reverse the negative impacts of climate change and replenish and protect our planet. All this starts today.
After this brief overview, we can now dive deeper into the COP. The following article is on what happened today.
Day 5 of COP27. The negotiations are progressing. Just in this moment, a first informal consultation on funding agreements for loss and damages is coming to an end, and the first small agenda items have even been closed altogether. The topics of the day were youth and future generations, science and human rights.
The first ever Children and Youth Pavilion has opened at COP this week. As climate change is disproportionately affecting young people, the Children and Youth constituency to UNFCCC, called YOUNGO, sees the pavilion as an important step to have their voices heard. Still, they note that young expertise needs to be integrated in all spaces, including the negotiations, and not sidelined in its own bubble. Framed by the youth-focused day, the advisory board of the initiative Youth of a Country had its first meeting. The joint cooperation between Egypt and the United Nations aims to empower young people and strengthen participation in different sectors, such as education, employment, and entrepreneurship. Throughout the day, several youth-led events took place, addressing young perspectives on loss and damage, mitigation, and just transition.
Civil society has started putting up crucial pressure via protest actions on the issues of human rights, climate justice, and fossil fuel phase-out. Many observers were dressed in white today, honoring the rights of environmental defenders and political prisoners. The Women and Gender constituency of the UNFCCC had initiated this solidarity action endorsed by many Egyptian human rights organizations. Instead of white shirts, yellow crosses could be spotted at the conference yesterday. They symbolize the struggle around the village Lützerath that the German government is currently evicting so that the company RWE can extract coal. Climate justice activists also called on fossil fuel lobbyists and other polluters to be expelled from the conference.
These actions call out greenwashing, which remains a big problem at COP. A new report shows that more than 600 fossil fuel lobbyists are attending the climate conference more than ever. They are even majorly represented in party delegations, such as UAE and Russia. Philip Yakpour from Public Participation Africa put it bluntly: if you want to address malaria, you don't invite the mosquitoes. The new Global Witness report stated that greenhouse emissions of oil and gas projects are often 3 times as high as producers claim. A new UN initiative aims to draw a red line around greenwashing concerning net zero strategies. It sets out a roadmap to ensure that net zero commitments of companies, cities, and regions are credible and ambitious. According to the initiative, companies shall not claim to be net zero while they support the exploration of fossil fuels, deforestation, or lobby against climate action.
The fossil of the day was awarded to Japan yesterday. The Fossil of the Day is a negative award handed out by the Climate Action Network International to point out the worst performance of countries at COP. Japan invested $10.6 billion in fossil fuels last year, despite a consensus that no more fossil investments should be made to meet climate targets. In addition, they are lobbying other countries to greenwash coal.
Last but not least, we received concerns about the logistical situation on the ground, worrying that a lack of sufficient food and infrastructure for participants could also impact the outcomes of COP. Please, take care everyone.
We have already learned a lot about the COP. We now switch to our editorial team on site, which is coming up with an exciting interview. Dear editors, who have you brought in with you this time?
What is climate finance?
So there are not very clearly agreed definitions of what constitutes climate finance and what doesn't. But generally speaking, it's finances mobilized by global north countries to pay for climate adaptation and climate mitigation projects in the global south.
And what are the problems of climate finance?
So as I mentioned, there are not very clearly agreed definitions of what constitutes finance and what doesn't. So there's a lot of disagreement on how much finance has actually been raised or not. So, and also, this is also because that there's some issues with the reporting system. So there's a lot of opportunity for over-reporting and mislabeling of projects and double counting of resources.
And what are your core demands for climate finance at COP27?
So I would say one of the key demands that developing countries have put forward at COP27 is the demand for finance to cover loss and damage. This is something that has been discussed a lot today, and it seems like that's something they really want to get out of COP27, and they're not willing to leave without some progress on this issue.
Amazing, thank you.
You see, that's really something else when you hear something like this directly from the ground. We want to continue with this and pass the microphone on to activists on the ground.
Yeah, I'm Makaivan Van Boy. I'm the national president of the Catholic youth organization CYO Sierra Leone, which is an affiliate of FIMCAP, which is the umbrella Catholic youth organization officially recognized by the Holy See. So I'm here at COP. This is my first COP to represent young people from the global south and indeed all the world. Indeed, this is my first COP, like I said, but I really feel, to be honest, that some of my expectation, my biggest expectation, have not been met, particularly with the issue of youth representation in the big rooms where the world leaders are. I feel that it is limited, and we are going to be here for the most part most of these big leaders, once they deliver their speeches and they go back home. But we will be here from the beginning to the end. And then we're not in these big rooms where these decisions are being made, and some of this agreement they are signing up to will go on for 20 years and more. Most of them who are signing these agreements will be dead and gone by then, unfortunately. So we will be leaving behind to take care of the mess they will create, which we are not really responsible for. So for me, I'm a little bit disappointed because of that. But we would not stop. At this point, we will continue to put our voices together, to unify around our desires, and to really push them to express the desires that we all share. So it is my biggest hope that in the next CAPs, in the coming CAPs, there will be more spaces available for young people to be included into these negotiations, and our concerns, our wishes, our hopes and desires will be included to reflect these decisions they are making, this big agreement they are signing, because the world they are going to leave behind will be our world, not theirs, our world, so that we can have a world where all manner of life is possible. And one of my biggest fears is that we as young people, we care about what the actions that they make, because most young people, they imitate what they see others do around. That is how we learn as we go on with the rest of our lives. Sometimes when we see them do one thing we think is right, and we copy it, and we try to replicate that to the future generations, from one generation to the other generation. But now they are saying one thing and they are doing the complete opposite on the other hand. So that's our fear as young people who are leading on this stage, representing our voices. So the example they are living, I feel that is bad. So I think there's a big hypocrisy around all that. So like I said earlier, we're not here to just make fancy pictures or to fly in these big airplanes, but we are really here because it matters. This is environmental issues, it matters, and this is going to lead on from one generation to the other. So I feel that we cannot afford that hypocrisy to just wear nice suits and do fancy pictures, but we want our voices to be heard, and we want action, and we want it now. But again, yes, as young people, we have been challenged to prefer solutions, alternatives, how we can do better with our energy crisis. So I want to say that to all the young people who are not here, that we need the education, we need the education, we need the education, we need the education needed to put into work the technology that is required to be able to use it, to implement it, and to bring green energy into our industries, into our countries, and make our cities greener and even our lives better from one generation now to the next. So I want to encourage everyone to not lose hope, but to do the tiny bits of things that we have started, and we will still continue to push so that our planet can be safe and Mother Earth will be a better place where all manner of life is possible. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this important and powerful perspective. The heat is turning up at COP now. The vibe is driven by the protest actions, however, within a rather difficult and repressive atmosphere. Since tomorrow will be all about decarbonization, we expect more news and look forward to sharing it with you here. This was today's Climate Youth News broadcast from COP27 in Egypt. Feel free to stay for a live Q&A session with Ukrainian activist Mila Sirik, and tune in again tomorrow for Climate Youth News. Bye!
Yes, hello everyone to the question and answer. Today we have a guest from Ukraine. We have Mila. Hey, Mila. Maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell the people why you're at COP.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mila Sirichenko. I'm an environmental activist from Ukraine, Mariupol, and currently I'm studying in Vienna for environmental policy and sciences. I'm here at Egypt right now in COP. It's super crazy for me because I didn't expect to come here at all. But so happens that I'm here. I was an official delegate from Ukraine at COI 17, the Global Conference of Youth, and I stayed here for COP 27. And now I'm really glad to speak about Ukrainian youth on behalf of Ukrainian youth to raise the voice of displaced youth all over the world, and yeah, also to talk with people about Ukraine and our environmental problems which were created by a Russian war here.
Yeah, so maybe you can tell us a little more what you're especially doing here, how you raise this voice, how you connect maybe to people.
Here I use almost every opportunity to speak with usual people like us. Okay. Like to speak with people. Sometimes it's just usual people. Sometimes it's like today I spoke on with presidency of COP, with some ministries of other countries like Poland or United Kingdom, where I said that we should develop more opportunities for Ukrainian youth, for actually war refugees, because right now in all these countries in Europe, there are plenty of Ukrainian youth, but we still don't have enough voice, and we need more support because, yeah, the things that Russia is doing right now in my country are just awful, and they influence these actions, influence all world, and that's why we shouldn't be silent about it, and we need to stop it ASAP, because otherwise it's all slowing down the whole energy transition and the switch to renewable energy.
So what happened in the Ukraine? Maybe first you can tell a little of, I don't know, where you're from and what happened there, and maybe then also how it connected to environmental issues or climate issues that you're now raising.
So I'm from Mariupol, and unfortunately the city is now famous all over the world for the things that Russia did to the city and its people. And this it was a rapidly developing city in Ukraine, like 500,000 people there. And as I was studying in Kyiv, every 1 month I went back to my hometown, and always knew that something is new there, like a new park, some philharmonic, new cafe place, and it was so great to watch how my city is developing, and especially in comparison to the other city, Donetsk, which was under occupation of Russia for already 8 years, and Donetsk wasn't developing at all. It was just slowly going down, and not that slowly, but like this. And the development of Mariupol as a new Ukrainian city, industrial, unfortunately, because we had this factory Azovstal, which was polluting the sea, the air, and in the end it became like the last bastion for Ukrainian defenders. And we had our environmental problems before war, and now they're only developing. For example, for Ukrainian NGOs, now it's harder to control and to keep track of carbon emissions, because the data is closed for usual people because of the war, and it can be a lot of greenwashing or just some unofficial carbon emissions. And but still, Ukrainian government is supporting environmental movement, and we have our own first pavilion here. So maybe if anybody is watching here from COP, you're welcome to visit our pavilion in the zone of C, 5th pavilion. And it's our first pavilion even though it's a full-scale war in our country. So I'm really, really proud of that, even though I'm not took part in organizing this pavilion, but now I'm going there every day. And today there we had the global use of state given the head of delegacy of Ukraine. So it was also cool to show that Ukrainian youth is fighting for environmental future and sustainable future, even though it's a war.
But how could you say it's when the war started, how did the support change for NGOs? So how much capacity was there? Was there more capacity before? And how actually did you manage to come here during this war? How could you even, I don't know, how could Ukraine afford this, putting effort in here in this COP?
We still think it's worse to put effort and money in pavilion here, because this pavilion, if you go there, it's showing that there is a war in our country, that we need help. And on the other hand, it shows that we have a big potential for renewable energies, and we have a big future, which Russia just took from us day by day. And so yeah, it's like this. Right now, I think, of course, the majority of focus is not on sustainable development, but on war. And majority of of Ukrainian budget is going to war because we need it. And that's the case. We need military support to defend our territories, because otherwise, if we just stop right here, then Russia will just go on, and the people in occupied territories, they will die one by one, as they're doing right now, unfortunately.
And how do you feel now at COP? How did the Russian war affect this? How do you, I don't know if you've seen any Russians here in the space, how do you think it's affect the negotiations, the spaces all here?
As I know, they now like keeping low key, and they are not that loud as they could be. They don't have here pavilion, but they still have an office. And when I went there, I felt really not that good, because seeing that the country, which is literally is a terrorist state right now, is still like, because it's on the consistency of United Nations. And in general, I think if you heard that's Russian war in Ukraine at some point, but still it's I think it's not enough attention, and sometimes people addressing like it's war in Ukraine, or it's like Putin's war, even though millions of Russians, unfortunately, they support this war. And basically the only thing we can do right now is to make Russia stop this war, make Russia give our territories and our people back, and then we cannot build a sustainable future with war in the middle of Europe. Or of course, war shouldn't exist anywhere, and when it's so close to you, then you start to feel the danger of it and the danger of fossil fuels, because war happened also partly of dependency on of Europe on Russian fossil fuels.
So we have some questions there. So is the Russian war against Ukraine overshadowing the COP so much that it is limiting the negotiation? So you said
no,
stay in the space, but
yeah, it cannot be overshadowing, because it's a part of climate crisis, Russian war in Ukraine. But it's still not enough space for us, and it's still not enough user or other Ukrainian activists. So it's not overshadowing at all. Thank you for questions.
Yes, so we already spoke about the pavilion, and how is the pavilion, and how are you connected to the civil society back at home in the Ukraine, and how does the COP get attention in general?
Like, unfortunately, you could think that Ukraine is now in the middle of everything, but it's not. And even on this event I told you about of handover of youth global statement, it was not enough media, not enough people. But for example, we are organizing an action on Saturday to support Ukraine and other countries which were affected by fossil fuels wars. But according to United Nations rules here, we cannot address any country specifically. So we cannot say like support Ukraine. And we but we want to make it obvious and get as much media attention as possible. So it's happening on 11 a.m. on Saturday.
So maybe it's a good transition. So what actions did you plan? You already said this, and what support do you wish from other countries here at COP, but maybe also over or after the COP, during it, from home, from wherever?
That's a great question, because from my point of view as Ukrainian and from majority of Ukrainians' point, we need more military support. Also from Germany, and we know that right now I've seen on the news that Germany is giving it, because we cannot like just stop fighting with each other, because Russia already took a big percentage of our territories and big percentage of people, and a lot of people were dying and killed. For example, even in my home city in Mariupol, there is data that it was more than 80,000 people died there. And when I pronounce it, I don't really realize it, because it's crazy to think about this quantity of people. So what we need to do is to find and put on trial the people who are responsible for it. And it's a lot of people, and we still need to do it. And the support we need from other countries is definitely military support, and of course humanitarian support, but first of all military, because that's the only way we can defeat Russia and stop this war.
Yeah. Maybe coming back to COP. So there are many fossil fuel representatives here, also from the Russian delegation. So what do you think about this at first? And then did you already had interactions with Russian delegates, Russian representatives, I don't know, fossil fuel lobbyists?
As I know, Russia for a long time already trying to put their into their carbon emissions, the emissions of occupied territories, the emissions of Crimea, of Donbass, right now of other occupied territories. So they will legalize it this way, the territories they occupied. And the Ukrainian delegation is fighting for a long time already against it. And our voice is more or less being heard, but still not enough. And I just know that countries that like neutral or kind of support Russia, they can just paralyze the negotiation. And if they wanna like paralyze the negotiation of carbon emissions or NDS, then they can keep with war scene, even though they need to discuss some other stuff. So it's like quite tricky. And personally, thanks God, I have not yet met any Russian activists, because it's also like personally painful for me sometimes, and I don't feel strong enough. Maybe only if I have a team, then to negotiate with them.
Maybe you already said how other people can support you, but maybe specifying on that, how could youth support you? How could youth from here, but also from around the world, support Ukrainian activists like you?
It's a great question, because youth is a powerful thing, and I believe in youth, and I believe in still, even though so much bad happened to my country and partly to my family, I still believe in good in people, and the best thing that anybody can do is to speak up and to go for protests against Russian oppression, against wars. Show your country that we need military support, because a lot of people, as I said, they are like for peace. It's a great thing to be for peace. Yes, I'm also for peace. But if you're for peace in that kind of situation when people will die, so actually you don't want to be responsible for any of deaths, right? So the main thing is you can do is ask for more military support.
Maybe as a last question, or maybe not a last question, but a last statement, maybe you can read the last, or I read the last for you. Please let her know that our hearts and wishes are with her, the warmest stop.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to say? Or did you already?
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak up about my situation and about situation in Ukraine. And I'm really grateful for your support. And yeah, I was never thinking that war can happen right now in my country, and it's still crazy to believe it. And but it is our reality right now, and I prefer not to think about it, but just think what steps can I do, and that's better to best way to live right now. So right now I'm in COP. Yes, and we are doing action for Ukraine, and you also help, and thank you so much for it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.